Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the DFS kickoff stream here on my YouTube channel. You can see we have some new digs. I have some new graphics. I am ready to roll this year with the DFS season. A little bit of a weird schedule today because I am heading to Vegas on in a few hours, actually heading to the airport here. So this is going to be the typical schedule here. We'll be back. I got lots of questions asking if I was going to be doing the SPY bankroll challenge. We will be running that back, although DraftKings doesn't have a SPY out right now for week one, which I don't really understand why. So we'll have to figure that out. They do have a SPY for the Showdown slate. So hopefully they do release that. But yes, we will be reviewing lineups on Monday. I will also be doing Showdown crams. So I had done these at the end of last year. I had started messing around with them. 15, 20-minute shows after inactives come out, talking through kind of the updated sims as far as run the sims, updated injuries, last minute kind of ownership changes, and just getting us all ready before we submit those lineups. We'll be doing those Wednesdays, of course. LOLz with Brian. He's actually going to be joining me here in a little bit. Because of my flight tonight, we can't do our typical LOLz schedule time. So we're going to do a little special morning edition here. We can get Brian to release his sims, perhaps, if he's gotten around to setting up his week one model. And then Thursdays, again, another Showdown cram for Thursday Night Football. Fridays, my favorite show to do. We'll be doing those in the afternoons, GPP strategy show. And even though I'm going to be gone on Friday, I recorded one with Leone for this week. So that will release Friday at noon. We talked about kind of more macro stuff for week one and some of the edges and things we can take advantage of. We did look at the salary, some of the dynamics, and how us as GPP players might be able to take advantage of that. So that video will drop Friday at noon. And then another new show I'm adding this year is going to be an exposure cram on Sunday mornings at 10:30. So this is going to be before inactives are released, but we'll have a ton of information by then as far as practice reports. We'll have the Schefter bombs. We'll have late, ownership movement, all of that stuff. So I wanted to do kind of a show, huddle in there, talk about kind of where I'm at with my lineups, my targets and all that good stuff. And then, a final thing here, we do have the private Discord channel running. It's the Run the Sims channel within the Deposit Kingdom Discord. If you are a member of the channel, you can upgrade your membership if you're a club VIP or randomizer royalty and get access to that channel. That link is down below. The name of the tier is Hand Builders and Opto Bros, and that's where we're going to be hanging out, brainstorming the slates. I'll be sharing my exposures, my lineups, maybe not my exact lineups. I mean, come on. But you get the point. And lots of smart people in there, and we'll be discussing those slates. The other way you can get access to that Discord for free is if you become a Run the Sims subscriber. So if you get a Run the Sims package, you also get access to that channel. Included in that, you can get 10% off any Run the Sims package right now with promo code P, as evidenced by that new graphic there. So I believe that is the housekeeping. Those are the plugs here. Let me check in on the chat. You doing a Showdown show while in Vegas? No, that's kind of why I'm doing this one right now, because I wanted to do a look at the slate, start looking at some of that pricing and maybe some early ownership. So yes, normally I will be doing a Thursday night stream, not this week because I will be in Vegas. If SPY isn't released, would you shift to the 75 end zone? That's actually what I registered for now. I figure last year I would play, a couple of the SPYs, a couple of the $75 and $50. So we'll do that. If not, I also created the Deposit Kingdom Listener League for week one. Apparently I made it too small. I made it 100 and it filled. My thinking is I hate having to promote filling that. So I always start small. Next week, we will hashtag make it bigger. What up? No dunks. We going to get no dunks in the DFS streets this year? Which one is this? Is this Trey? Is this Skeets? Is this JD? Who is the no dunks here appreciating the DFS grind? We got to convert you guys to DFS grinders. We got you to become Top Shot Maxis, and now we will get you to become NFL DFS grinders. This is where I find out if LOLz is a serious DFS channel. You know what? We will see. We will see. Maybe this is the year Brian, is finally ready to start talking. It took him about a year to admit that avoiding duplicates in a lot of DFS contests was an extremely overlooked strategy element. He still is remiss to mention that. Maybe we can get more out of him. That is correct. We are back, baby. We are back. Blair will be streaming randomly from Vegas with bad takes. We can look forward to that. We are going to Vegas tonight. Myself, Blair, Pat Carrain, Sam Hoppen. We're going to be there with Ship Chasing doing FFPC main event drafts. But I want to start looking at the slate here before Brian swings by. I'm going to pull stuff up over on Run the Sims. I know Justin has his first batch of projections in here, and I thought we could talk through this together and see what we're looking at here as far as this slate is looking. And let me get all set up here. Been waiting all year to talk US Open DFS with you guys. I know if there's one thing Brian and I are good at, it is disappointing when it comes to talking about actual specific DFS contests, but we're going to do much better this year. I promise we're going to fix that. We are going to fix that here. And if you're looking for more, like I said, kind of week one main slate talk, I did record with Leone earlier this week, and that is going to be the focus there. Sorry, I'm struggling with my my screen share here. So just give me 1 second here. Head over to the simulator. Okay, we are. Let me get the screen share so you guys can see what I'm working with here. So what I've been using for just and let me pop off this sidebar. Let's go to this. Here we go. So there's a few different things that I'm going to be using regularly within Run the Sims. The first is the classic optimizer, and this is for the main slates. But because I'm not going to be doing a lot of MME this year, I'm going to be using this as a screener where I can look at this information quickly. I was able to get the color scale added to this, and I talked about this a lot last year, how I really simplified my process as far as the things I was looking at when I was hand building tournament lineups. And what I love now is that this screener has all of the information I want. So later in the week, we are going to get projected ownership, which is obviously the last piece of the puzzle as far as making very strong tournament lineups. We got our baseline projection. We have our points per dollar here to see who are the best values. We have our opto rate, showing how much these guys are popping in optimal lineups. And then what I also love are these various tiers for looking at 50 percentile projection, as well as the projected ceiling. And really what I'm doing when I'm building my GPP lineups is I'm looking at basically 3 factors. I want to know ceiling. I want to know ownership. I want to know how often they're appearing in the Sims. And then also just the points per dollar, where are the good values? And so kind of using those 3 to 4 elements to triangulate the plays is really where things unlocked for me last year and came together. So I talked a little bit more about this with Leone and specifically the week 1 slate, but this is where I'm going to be living this year in the screener. I know we've been talking in the Discord a little bit about some other features, and I am told we are going to continue to get enhancements and updates from an optimizer standpoint. I know one thing that we've been talking about is being able to do macro stack settings when you run the optimal. One thing I like to do is see, okay, what are the optimal lineups if you do force a stack in a bring back? And so I'm told that is in the works. For now, you can click on individual games and then look at stacks within that game based on projection. So if I'm looking at Carolina here and I want to lock the quarterback and I want to make sure I want to see the best lineups with a Sam Darnold double stack here. And so then I can click find stacks and it'll show me, my total salary used, my projected points, and my projected points per dollar, and give you kind of quick snapshots. So this is I think, a really good hand builder type tool, because often we're trying to decide, between these, double stacks and who to go with on there. Do we want to toss in the running back? Do we want to go with the 2 wide receivers? And say I don't want to have Christian McCaffrey in there, I could go 0 on flex, and I could make it 2 wide receivers instead. Then we get Christian McCaffrey out of there. Now we're looking at the DJ Moore and Robbie, the DJ Moore and Terrace. We can throw in some Shi Smith, who not on my radar, but apparently popping in the optimals, and of course, Dan Arnold. So that's just a little teaser for the kind of stuff I'll be looking at to help me build my week 1 lineups. And then we'll head over to some showdown content here. 6 wants the answers to the showdown test. So yeah, I think this will be a fun showdown slate. We're already starting to get some interesting news, because Chris Godwin is now dealing with a quad injury. I was reading up on that this morning. Reporter Greg Auman says that we're not really going to know until warmups what his status is going to be. I think it's kind of tricky, because we have seen Chris Godwin play through injuries historically, but never a great sign when you're heading into your first game of the season and not at full health. So I think there's some interesting dynamics at play. I believe the Cowboys are getting healthier at their offensive line. I believe there were some questions about availability there, but they got some good news. So I thought that line was a little weird. I mean, I know the Bucs are good, but you can get the Cowboys +8. And with Dak Prescott, being all systems go, that seems a little interesting to me. So I'm going to pull up here. I'm now on the DIY simulator. I have selected the showdown captain mode game for this Dallas Tampa Bay here. And we can, there's different ways we can look at this. You can see that this comes preloaded with Justin Freeman's projections, and you can even see his assumptions here as far as market share, catch rate, all of that good stuff. You can go in here and tweak if you want, or you can trust Justin, who is going to stay on top of this and be updating this throughout the week. But that's kind of what is so fun about this tool, is that you can go in here, and if you think he's too low on Simi Fioco, you can go and change that. So I kind of just want to dive right in and run the sims here and see kind of what we're seeing from an optimal results standpoint. And while we are running the sims, I will bring in the sim lord himself, Brian Hooper. How are we doing, Brian?
Hey, buddy. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Oh, why can't I hear you? Maybe I should put my my headphones on.
Oh, that might be it.
Oh, hopefully. No, I could hear you now, but for a second I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming my stuff's working.
Yes.
And to make this feel like a real LOLz episode, I did a couple shots before we started here early in the morning. So
yeah, that's one thing people don't know, is Brian and I kind of have a pre-show ritual where we do rip multiple shots before we go live, and it wouldn't be the same without doing that in the morning here.
I'm liking this showdown action. I saw you were giving away the dupe strategy again. What's this all about?
I was giving away the dupe strategy. That's what we're avoiding. I was curious. Have you finally gotten around to updating your NFL model?
No, still working on it. I'm actually working with like a few coders too, so it's taken a while. I'm redoing my prop sims, so hopefully I can make that a lot easier, and I can get them updated with injury news and stuff faster.
Yeah,
and hopefully that's still, the sports books aren't as sharp yet on props, and you can make some money on there without getting banned immediately.
Yeah. Have you you think you're gonna max the showdown, the big $10 one on Thursday?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. I think I'm gonna be more hand builder mode for showdown this year. I still want to get in the 20 max streets a little bit. I did have fun with that. But as far as tomorrow, I'm going to be in Vegas. So I think a single entry Pete for a Vegas lineup.
Yeah, it's tough. Week 1 is tough because, well, if you do it the way I do it anyways, like from the ground up, like you don't want to go too crazy because you might not have everything lined up. And but week 1 is also when a bunch of noobs are playing.
Yep.
So you kind of want to, like, the first 6 weeks or so is probably the best time to play DFS.
For
Period.
sure. Yeah, I was reading, I do have pulled up here the, this is running the Sims here. So the red band is how much Dak Prescott is showing up as a flex play in the 5,000 Sims, and the blue band is how often he is showing as a captain. So you can see those percentages there as far as flex and captain. One thing I would love, Justin, this is the one nice thing about Run the Sims as I continue to be in their ear about things. It would be great to add the ownership column to this so we could compare ownership relative to how often they are appearing in the sim. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, probably both non-captain ownership and regular captain ownership.
For sure. For sure. And I mean, we can then go and cross-reference this to ownership. Brian, I was reading this morning, ETR had an article about some showdown strategy. And, Cody had mentioned like one even simple thing for hand builders would be just, if you are trying to avoid duplicates, to make sure you have one guy in there that's sub 10%. Now, I know you're letting the math dictate that at all, but I mean, how do you feel about that? If you scroll down here, obviously this isn't their ownership percentage, but kind of forcing yourself to get outside your comfort zone with some off the wall picks.
Yeah. I mean, you basically have to. I would look at it kind of like a bar chart, like where the left side is, or just a graph where the left side is how many entries are in the GPP. So like the larger amount of entries, the more unique you're going to have to get. So if you're hand building, but you're entering the $10 $1 million to first, whatever, you still got to get unique. You still got to get very unique. Now, if you're playing against, let's say 100 opponents, you're going to bring that way down. You're not going to have to go totally insane. But I saw some of Cody's tweets, and I like that if you're going to hand build, he's still doing it based off of, data research.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an excellent strategy for making whatever 5 to 20 lineups by hand, is thinking along the lines of what he's talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And, I would say like I registered for the red zone and the spy for the single entry on Thursday. In the red zone, 1,100 entries. So, I mean, that's still getting on the verge of like the most popular lineups are going to be duplicated there, but you're not having to go like backup fullback in that contest.
Right. Yeah. Or like we've had a couple showdown streams we've done over the last year and a half, and we'd have like tight ends in our lineup who are projected to get like 0.7 of a catch. You know what I mean? But it makes sense when you're playing against, 300,000 lineups, and you just hope he gets that one TD. But in the smaller GPPs, it's not necessary. But there's probably a whole bunch of new people, Pete, too. So like just some simple ways to think about this is, you could see in the right column there, the salary. Just anything under 50 is going to get you a little more unique. Like that's nothing crazy. Where a lot of new players, they build lineups and they're like, oh, I still have $300 left over. Let's see how I could spend this. And in something so dupe heavy like showdowns, just leave the 300. Maybe even go a little lower, and then along the same lines as the bigger the GPP, the more unique you want to get, and you can kind of combine it. So you throw in your 12% owned guy with 400 on, and now you're kind of on the right track. Or instead of Prescott at captain, you go a little bit lower there, and now in your kind of 200 GPP to 1,000 maybe, let's say, or under, you're probably going to get unique enough. Because if you aren't unique, you're gonna split with 20, 30, 50 people, and it's not going to be a good time, unless you want to like have a funny tweet about being a millionaire winner.
Yeah, which who doesn't want to do that, Davis? Yeah. So I do think that's a good point too, and like also, the whole reason we talk about that, the dupes and stuff, is because these tournaments are so top heavy. And so you need to be solo or maybe shipping, first with one other person at most to really realize your expected value. If you're continually building lineups where you're chopping with 25, 30 other lineups, it's going to be very hard for you to beat the rake over the long term, unless you're just really, really good.
And there's just a significantly lower amount of combinations of lineups, a lot less combinations. So just by that fact that there's only, I don't know, 12 player realistic plays on each team, that there's just not many lineups you can make. And this is going on the crazy end is you could play guys who are like 0.01 chance, catches projected.
Yeah.
And you just win with a donut in your lineup by fitting in everything else. I've seen people win with that strategy as well.
Yeah, and you think about theoretically the relationship between salary and projected points is strong. Obviously, there's inefficiencies with the pricing, but in general, if you're leaving salary on the board, you're sacrificing projected points for uniqueness. And yeah, I still have best ball brain right now, but like a good analogy for that would be a lot of people don't want to have two players at the onesie position that have the same bye week. You don't want to be taking a 0 that week. And yet it's probably a very unique combination because you're going to sacrifice, say, the 25 points for that 1 week where your two quarterbacks have the same bye week. Not ideal to sacrificing 25 points. But if you're talking about unique pairings of quarterbacks that could win you weeks 15 through 17, you're sacrificing those projected points for a unique combination that could give you tournament leverage. And so that's, I think, the push-pull we're always trying to balance, right? Not giving up too much projected points, but giving up just enough that we're unique.
Definitely. Yeah. I always simplify that by saying like whenever we talk about these kind of unique strategies is like, don't just shove a bunch of 1%ers in your lineup. Clearly you don't want, like, you're going to be unique, but you're going to win once every, decade or century, with that lineup. So you definitely can't, you want a minimum, even in the large field GPPs. And because there's a give and take, like at a certain point, like you need to get back some EV. Like your ROI can't be 0 or a bank. Like you have to like make some lineups that are going to give you back some money to play another day. And also too, judging dupes is not an exact science. It is a science, but it's not like an exact science where I'm like, I know for a fact this is going to be 20. This lineup will be dupe 20 times, where it might be 13 times or 27 times or something like that. And that type of thing matters. So like you're just kind of ballparking it more.
Yeah. And I think too, this is something Cody's also talked about a decent amount, is this idea of most optimizers and stuff, if they are showing you ownership, they're showing you cumulative ownership, and kind of understanding that not all ownerships are created equal. 20% guys is wildly different than a 35% and a 5%, even though they both cumulatively add up to 40%. The one with the 5% is so much more valuable because there's just going to be way more combinations of the 20% guys being duplicated.
Yep. And if we add in the two other things I mentioned, like, okay, it's 40%, but one lineup's a 50,000 salary and the other one's a 49.5. The 49.5 is going to be owned a lot less. Or if you flip the higher owned guy from captain to a flex position, even though that the sum of that ownership's the same, the lower owned captain's going to be less duped. Same line of thinking.
I'm curious on your thoughts on this, because I'm looking at some of these optimal lineups, and based on the Vegas game script with the Bucs as -8, you would assume that most hand builders would be pushed toward 4-2 heavy Bucs builds, or maybe the classic 3-3 balance, because hand builders tend to gravitate to that as well. When I look at these optimal lineups here, we're actually seeing lots of Cowboys on slot. And I'm curious how you would think about it. Like if I was tossing, 150 into the mini max or whatever, I'm going to assume I'm going to run into a lot of these opto generated lineups, just because those are how those are being generated. But then if I'm manually entering one into a single entry like the spy, that's a smaller field. Do you think that almost that could be completely the opposite, in that people are going to be hand building more toward how Vegas projects it?
That's a good question. I don't know what the difference between like Opto Bros, how many Opto Bros go into the single entries. I imagine it's still pretty high because, like me, I just put one of my 150s in the single.
Right.
But you might be right. Yeah, it might be more hand builds that you're gonna have to fight. But let me comment really quick on what you said with the Cowboys onslaught.
Yeah.
Typically in when I use an optimizer over the past, the onslaughts, you kind of have to force them. They don't typically pop up that early in the optimals. So like, and I think it's not a bad idea if you're going to build a whole bunch of lineups and then sort through them to force, just generally speaking, forgetting about this specific game, force a whole bunch of 5-1s in there. And then force a bunch of whole 4-2s and then let the optimizer, and then don't force anything, just to get a nice mix of different stack types in your sort.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the valuable things too of looking at the kind of projected lineups is just getting a feel for what the popular construction is going to be on that slate. And you can tell with pricing why this might be happening in that where am I here? Optimal results. Just because Evans and Godwin are priced higher than both Amari and CeeDee Lamb, you can see that their projected points are roughly similar. And so the optimizer is squeezing in more Cowboys just because you're having to pay a premium to kind of decide which of these elite Bucs wide receivers is going to be the one that goes off.
Yeah, right. It's definitely an opto. It's just part of the math that an optimizer is going to spit at you no matter what. But I mean, honestly, I don't hate that strategy. Just generally speaking, outside of this game, of big onslaught stacks and showdowns.
Yeah, we've talked about this, or we've talked about it with Leone too on Tilt Space and stuff, and just about, you mentioned how if you have your set of 150, that you're probably just going to drop one of those 150 into the single entries as you kind of max enter there. If you had an infinite amount of time for every slate, would you be kind of hand selecting or catering that lineup to the contest size?
That's one of the things I'm trying to add this year. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So that it's just not enough time, not enough tools to do that previously as accurately as I wanted to. And kind of the general idea is what I said, 10 minutes ago of it's kind of this tiered strategy where, certain criteria fit better in different size GPPs. And it's pretty logical, right? You don't have to be as contrarian or as worry about dupes as much, the lower the amount of opponents you have. Right. And, but, ownership is different in different GPPs, like the higher dollar ones, the better plays are typically more higher owned. And in the single entries, the ownership can get pretty wacky sometimes where you'll have super high own, positions, and you can easily get like a guy who would be, 12% owned in the milli at like 2% owned in the SPY.
Right.
Not because the guy's bad. It's just because it's more, that's just the way that I think historically, you pay attention to the SPY more than I do, but I think historically a lot of times the SPY can end up with some wacky ownership percentages or just high on certain guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, intuitively it makes sense, right? If you were playing a 10-man showdown contest with your buddies, the kind of plays you'd be making would be very different than a 100,000 person tournament. And so then the real question is how much are you getting, like if you're letting your sim do it, then that's great. But if you're trying to manually, determine between a 5,000 person contest and a 7,000 person contest, the lines start to get pretty blurry there.
Yeah. I'd say like under 1,000 small field, over 1,000 to 7 or 8 is mid. And then over that, I would consider large field GPPs. And then your outlier milli maker types would be in their own category, kind of. So that's how I think of it. So like, let's say 16,000 entries. Well, that's a large field GPP. 7, 5, 4, that's mid. And then anything under 1,000, I would consider small. And I really don't think, if you have a strategy for each of those, I really don't think it's going to matter if it's 800 or 550 opponents, right? That's about the same. it shouldn't matter too much. And I'm seeing some chatter in the chat really quick with like, if you enter a ton of lineups like Awesemo or I do, it's perfectly fine to enter a different 150 in each 150. That's what Alex does, unless his strategy's changed and I haven't noticed. But I typically don't do that, but I sometimes do that. It depends. That's a little different than what we're talking about here, where we're kind of more targeting the size of each GPP and then making smaller adjustments for each one of those. And also we're this is kind of for like people who don't know as much as a lot of DFS bros, right?
Yeah. And I think too, I guess the takeaway that I'm getting at too is, even though you could maybe get away with a more chalky lineup in a smaller field contest, you still probably want to be leaning toward a contrarian play, a contrarian lineup, because, we talked about this with the super small field, like the Thunderdome stuff. Like a lot of these guys are just putting in their cash lineup, their most optimal lineup, and you can actually take advantage of, less likely outcomes in bigger ways. Your payoff will be bigger. You'll lose more frequently, but you also finish first at a higher rate. So it's almost like kind of counterintuitive, where it's like it's smaller field, so you don't have to be as crazy, but you might be rewarded even more if you are contrarian.
Yeah. And this is outside of showdowns, but me and you played a Yahoo Thunderdome, whatever theirs is, their high stakes one last year. And we swapped off of a guy, right? Because we knew what the other guy, we assumed we knew what the other guy was going to do, and he wasn't going to switch because he wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Did we win? I think we did, but
I think we did, yeah.
I can't remember. But anyways, yeah, you can get into a lot of micro strategy. We did a whole episode. I can't remember which one it was, but like micro versus macro. Remember that?
Yeah.
On kind of like the bigger strategies of like dupe adjustments and stuff like that, and handling 150 lineups, or do you put in 300 into your 150s versus more of these micro strategies of like adjusting at the 3:00 Central Time, anyways, news for the second half of slates, looking at what your opponents might have if you're in a 10-man or 20-man GPP and adjusting for there. That's all easy EV. Another episode we did. If we were professional, we probably could list those episodes specifically in show notes, but we're not. So you're going to have to go look at the history.
One thing I want to ask you about too is, we saw the field get so much sharper last year with showdowns. Like everyone is building lots of intuitive rules into, especially their optimizer batch, quarterback, use at least one pass catcher or one bring back, yada, yada, not using two running backs from the same team, etc. But then that also can end up being some of our biggest edges if the field is all going there and you are forcing some weird things. Like in a fantasy draft, I don't want to take Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette on the same team, but in a showdown slate, it could work out and be very unique. So how do you think about kind of towing the line of leaning into correlations that have showed like a high R over time, but might make you more duplicated?
So like there's three ways, right? One is just hand build. You have to figure it out yourself. The other one is you have to trick the optimizer some way. You have to figure out how to get your optimizer to spit out, the results you're looking for. And that could just be by groups you set up and force or don't allow, or, some of the advanced settings on these optimizers, you could do a whole bunch of stuff there. And then the third way is the way I like to do it, where you sim the whole thing out and it just like the correlations on Run the Sims, it'll all be in there in the back end.
Yep. That's, again, too, for if we have some new people, one of the things that when I even first started wrapping my head around Sims, and the phrase that always stuck in my head that Brian said is, it's very hard for us to keep track of all these variables in our head. Some of them are easier. Like we know when a wide receiver catches a pass, his quarterback is going to also be benefiting from that because there's a direct correlation. Some of these are obvious, but there's so many of these other variables and how they impact the rest of the slate, the type of points that can be scored, that we just can't juggle, and the Sims can take care of that for us.
Yeah, thinking this is part of an easy EV versus hard EV. What edge do you have? over the field. I mean, like for the new people, this is going to be hard, obviously. So I would kind of stick to watching the streams, getting a base. Hopefully you subscribe to one of these good sites and use the information, but you can't keep all these variables in your head, in my opinion. But at least understand what's going on and then try to figure out, okay, what do I know? What am I doing? Like example Pete just said with like 2 running backs. I know for sure that's going to be pretty rarely owned. Is that right for this size GPP? Is this an edge that other people aren't doing? You're just asking questions like that. If you're not building from the bottom up, that's all you really can do.
Yep. Card fan asking, can you talk through making tweaks to the settings for the RTS Showdown sim? Are you only changing points, pace, etc. to account for different game results, or changing prior player settings as well? So this would be changing it for, how I understand it is Justin is using his, historical baselines, and then we'll continue to update his model as the season goes, as we get more information about target shares, how offenses are shaking out. But you're changing this for the game level. Now, I personally am not going to go in and tweak these. I do not think I know better than Justin in his model on this. However, I think that is what is fun. Like if you want to go in here and say, all right, he has Amari Cooper projected for a 22% target share, Lamb at 21%. Say I'm a Lamb guy. I've been taking Lamb ahead of Cooper in drafts. Say I want to flip that. I can then go change. I want to go 23 here and I want to go down here. But now notice what happened for a second there. I was over my market share. We can't have 101% market share. I got to get Amari back down. That's just a little tweak. Now, I don't think I'm smart enough or know about the overall play volume, how they naturally distribute to make that tweak, but you could theoretically make that tweak if you want.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I want to make as few decisions as possible. I don't like making decisions, and I've made plenty of decisions playing poker for a living for a long time, and I want to make as few as possible. If I was going to make changes, I would make game theory changes. So I'm not sure. I'm not familiar, but he's got a point scored in there. If you change that, does that change any of their projections?
Yes. Yeah. So if we, for this one,
yeah.
Like if we go, the Cowboys score 30 points.
Yeah.
I believe
there's no point total in there, but let's just say it does for a second.
Hang on, let's test this here. So we have Dak at 22.1 points here when I said 30. And now let me go back and let's say they score.
Just do something crazy.
Yeah, 10 points.
It didn't right there, but either way, you could still do that.
I need to save it, I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm going to actually have to figure that out. It should, though, because Justin was doing that for the season-long projections, and it was updating based on like those assumptions. But sorry, keep going on your point.
Well, let's assume it does, or even if it doesn't, you can do this manually. You could download this. You could download the projections and then adjust. Here's just like a game. Like, okay, what happens if the score was
here it did, Brian. So now I put it down to 10 points and Dax adjusted down to 17.9 after.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah. Perfect. So what happens if the flip the script? So leave the ownership and everything, because that's probably going to be close enough.
Yep.
And just say whoever's favored is now the underdog. Or then run it where, okay, what happens if Dallas blows them out? What happens if
30 to 10 Bucs?
Yeah, these are the type of showdown situations you're looking for, as opposed to just on average, how does this work? And the fact that it's a simulation is great too. So
yep. So I think that's very, very good advice from Brian, where you're tweaking the macro and not worrying about kind of the micro stuff. And you can go in here too. And I think even the rush rate and stuff could be fun to play with, because that's also making a game script assumption, which we're trying to, those are the game theory stuff where you're like, hey, what if the Cowboys get up early, even though they're 8-point, and they just run Zeke the whole game? Maybe their rush rate's up at 60%.
So you could say final score 34-27, but it's actually Dallas coming back. They were down 30 at halftime. So then you could just up their pass ratio to 80% or something, right? and then say, okay, in this game script, what happens? I'd much rather do that than go, I think, Godwin's market share is 26%, because I'm such a football expert. I think you're going to do much better instead of those little marginal hard EV things of adjusting projections by 0.2, 0.4 and stuff like that, by thinking more on like the game theory level of like, well, okay, what happens here? What happens here? And then picking your 10 lineups, your 20 lineups if you're hand building.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of edge is the same for everything, right? It's like our specific player evals or how we predict specific player performance is incredibly shaky. On a season-long standpoint, on a daily standpoint, weekly, it does not matter. We are not that great at that. We can use historical baselines and tendencies, but what we can do is try to create, narratives of how these games can go and then build structures and lineups that help us benefit when we are, directionally correct.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. It's and I think it's all the edge is all this the game theory stuff. It's not, it used to be 2017 is different. 2017, I would have been like, I'm going to make projections better than what's out there. And for the most part, I was right. Now it's not really worth it. Unless that's your thing, obviously, then keep doing it. I don't want to discourage anybody, but like, it's a lot of work to get Antonio Brown from 12.8 points to his actual 13, which is the best that the DFS gods would tell us is no, it's actually 13. It's not like how much money is that going to make you over 1,000 slates? Like 12.8 to 13.1. Like it'll make you money. It'll make you a couple cents, but like it's a lot of work to get that.
Right. And it's almost to me like the advantage you're getting from that is just really understanding kind of how offenses are, divvying up their production or where it's coming from, and less about that specific number. Like you said, it's more value if you're like, hey, I noticed a tendency that they're shifting more run heavy these past few weeks in these game scripts than they've been. That's the more valuable thing versus I haven't projected for 19.2 instead of 18.4 points. Like that's not going to help you win.
No. Here's where two spots where it would be. One is halftime adjustments. Let's halftime on a Sunday. I'm talking about. Sorry, forget Showdown for a second. Say Zeke gets ruled out at a 3:00 game. Okay, well Pollard's got a whole bunch more points now. This is a clear and obvious advantage that people probably aren't going to adjust for. Or if it's a noon game and Zeke gets ruled out 15 minutes before kickoff. Well, okay, now that knowledge and those the 10, 15 points more that Pollard's going to average, that matters.
Yep. Yeah. And I do think I don't want to necessarily discourage people from messing around in there because it is fun. Like if you're like me and I really think Tony Pollard is a better running back than Zeke Elliott, it sure is tempting to go in there and start boosting Tony Pollard and throttling down Ezekiel Elliott. But you can very quickly get into trouble because it goes to that thing where you can't have your cake and eat it too, where you're like, I only changed this one thing that I, have a very narrow lens on, not realizing, okay, well, now if Tony Pollard's getting more work, maybe that means we need to shave off some passing expectation from the wide receivers. And next thing you know, you have this trickle down effect where you're messing up the entire projection set.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I mean, but like, hey, Elliott can get hurt. So if you run him at 3 points and Pollard at 18, and then just look at it and be like, okay, what happens in these scenarios? I mean, that one's pretty easy, though. I could tell you Pollard's going to be in all the optimals. So, that's what's going to happen. Siege also is notorious for the backup QB injury play. So those things can happen, but they're rare.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to Adam had Rufus Peabody on the ETR podcast, and they were talking about his model, and he was talking about how he had built in, injury expectations into his stuff. I think he referenced, quarterbacks generally have a 3% chance of getting injured and leaving a game based on his data. And I think that's another interesting thing where you get into, we have our inclinations of, oh, this guy's injury prone or not, but like, you can't do that on a micro level, but you can apply probably macro level inputs into your model to bake into, okay, running backs get injured at say a 5% rate if quarterbacks get injured at 3 or whatever. I mean, so you can build that stuff in.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to get into, you could, okay, the spread for this game is, what is the spread for this game Thursday? 8. Okay. How often you could figure this out fairly easily. How often is it backwards? Does the team that's favored by 8 lose by 8 or something like that? And then you could go, okay, this happens. Let's just say, for example, 5% of the time, I'm going to flip the total and then run 5% of my lineups if that actually happens, and then take some of those. You know what I mean? You could build out your 150 or your 20, so it would be a couple of your 20.
Yeah.
So like a couple of my 20 I want this outcome, a couple of my 20 I want this outcome. Things along that line.
And I think that is going to be kind of the powerful way to use the run the Sims tools, just because I think it is a trap. You know, we hear the bullshit from people. If I just had 150 lineups, I'd be fine. They're running median projections. They're spitting it out. They think they have the answers to the test, but that's not how you do it. It's playing and tweaking for these various scenarios and then building the best possible lineups for those. So I love that idea of going in and changing the macro inputs based on some ways you think the game might go differently than Vegas.
Yeah, and let's not discount totally just the general, intro strategy with using a simulation of you're comparing the optimal to the ownership, and if you trust your projections, and the guy's optimal is, let's say, 50% of the time he's in the optimal, and he's only owned 28% of the time, you want a lot of that value in your lineups, right? I mean, that should, if everything's right, which it probably is pretty close, you want that value in a bunch of your lineups. So you don't want to get crazy. Like if you're going to, try to get unique, it's probably not there with that guy. Now, if you think the ownership's wrong, that changes things, which can happen. But for the most part, ownership's probably around like an 8.8R point, somewhere around there. Maybe point. It depends on who's doing it.
Yeah, most of the ownership sets that I was looking at last year were, for Showdown, the ownership is it's pretty dialed in. It seems, obviously you get some quirky stuff with the main slate and all that, but just like the information, kind of, I don't know, meritocracy out there, like just everyone has the information, the inactives, everyone's pretty dialed in unless you really don't know what you're doing.
Actually, I do have a pretty good piece of advice for Showdown on being a hand building NFL fan, like a super fan. If you are like dialed into that team and like, oh, this guy has a chance of getting a catch near the red zone, even maybe. Mm-hmm. A lot of times these projection sites, they won't have that guy listed for any points at all. And if he's listed for no points at all, he's not going to show up in any of your optimizers. So if you want to tweak there, in a Showdown, that actually matters. A large field one mainly, but even midsize. Knowing that, I don't know, who's the Saints guy, Truman or whatever his name is.
Troutman,
Troutman, and is he might be even a starter now. I think they had injuries, but I wasn't paying attention. But you know what I'm saying, like a second or third stringer guy, and no, he's gonna probably get a couple targets. And no one knows this. Like I would go in there and then put him down for at least 0.1 fantasy points or 0.5 fantasy points or something.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, you're talking about, the projection error on some of those. It's literally binary because it might be one catch for that player. So even though it might be unlikely that they even get a catch, if they do, it completely changes their projection. If all of a sudden a guy goes from a 0 to a 2.6, or he gets in the end zone and it's a 7.6, I mean, that literally flips the Showdown slate on its head.
Right. And
7.6
at 0% owned.
At 0% owned. Yeah. I think a good example, like another one would be like, so I just read this article. The Chiefs are going to be running a lot more 2 tight end sets this year. Only 2 wide receiver sets. They like this guy, Blake Bell. Maybe you're saying like, okay, the secondary tight end here, week 1, no one's going to have him. He's the guy I put in there at low ownership. Like that kind of thing, I think is what you're kind of referencing, right?
Well, that Blake Bell would show up in a lot of optomizers even last year.
Regardless.
Regardless. Yeah. Which, and I'm saying that's good strategy too, but no, I'm like, I don't know the rosters that deep right now. So like, it would be probably someone even more obscure than him. But
I could give it because I saw Jalen Darden pop in one of these optimal. It looks like Justin has him for 1.8 points right now, one target for 9.4 yards. Or Tyler Johnson. Like a good example is Godwin might be out. So you could have one of these really randos.
Yeah, let's say Tyler Johnson had 0.
Yeah.
But that Godwin's going to go out. Like you could be like, oh, okay, I could take a chance, put him in for a couple targets. And no one else has them in the large field GPPs that could win you one.
Yep. Yeah. I think that makes sense. Yeah. And I guess in the more tangible thing here, you can see right now, like some of these wide receivers projected for no market share or target market share. So this is where you could go and kind of bully the optimizer. And like, I've been reading the practice reports, and Stephen Goodery, man, he's going to be on the field in some of these. And so I'm going to give him a 1% market share just to get him in the optimizer.
Yeah. Right. Or if you're like a super fan, you're in the city, listen to the talk radio, and you know the injury reports, and you're like, I think Jarwin actually might get some end zone looks this week or something like that. And here's another way you can like kind of back test it is like just go back and look at like slates and be like, it's hard to do at the beginning of the season, and it's hard to remember last season, but you know what, maybe during the middle of the year do this where you look back and you're like, I had this guy at 0 and he won someone a slate. He had like, is that me? Is that just complete luck? Why did this projection source I use not have this guy in there? Like because it'll happen where you'll go, random guy gets a showdown touchdown, and then you go back and look at your stuff and like, I had him for nothing. I had him for 0. And you could look throughout the industry. Some sites, some projection places might have him in there for a couple targets, and some just will have him for nothing.
Yeah, and this is definitely week 1, these first games. If you have a hunch or a lean, it's definitely time to take advantage of that. Like an interesting one to me is the Cowboys tight ends. Blake Jarwin got injured last year. Dalton Schultz played well down the stretch. Heading into this season, both in kind of like season-long drafts, and you can tell by Justin's projections here, everyone's kind of just like shrugging and saying, I guess it'll be a 50-50. In the preseason, they were each playing a similar amount of snaps. But who knows? Maybe we come out week 1 and one of these guys has a much bigger market share than the other. Like if you have a read on that situation, take advantage of that now, because once we get 3, 4, 5 weeks of data, we're going to have a pretty good idea of how this split is regularly shaking out.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of guesses going on at the beginning of the year.
Nick loving a midday LOLz. Only thing that could be better is a Vegas Dave appearance here. Brian, it is a treat because Brian, you had one of the best guest spots on my Friday GPP show last year. That was the infamous Release the Sims, the KC New York Jet stack. Morning Brian is where we get you giving up the goods of strategy. It's LOLz where you're just like, kind of constantly flipping off the camera.
Well, LOLz is, in my opinion, a gambling podcast.
Yeah.
And a podcast where just two guys talk, or two people talk.
Yes.
Where your show, I was participating in your show where it's like specifically for football for that Sunday slate. You know what I mean? So, and I volunteered to do that. So yeah, it's different. Like I think talking about Vegas Dave on a run that, you know what I mean? Like a Sims episode makes no sense at all. I'm sure that guy's never ran a fucking sim in his life.
See,
right?
If I make the switch over to our LOLz branding now we can talk about Vegas Dave all we want.
We get a White Claw. Here, now
go get a White Claw. We get our shots.
Before I forget what we were just talking about with that backup guy stuff.
Yeah.
Showdown only. Just
Showdown only.
That is meaningless on Sunday. Like if you're playing for that type of talk about like going too contrarian. There's so many combinations way before thinking about the third string tight end, and it just matters in large field showdowns. That's it.
Yeah. Are there any, more looking toward main slate week 1 NFL? Are there any, I don't know, macro trends that you're kind of interested in, things that you want to do differently from last year? Obviously we have some concrete differences of having a preseason this year compared to last year. I think we have maybe a little bit more data on these guys coming out of the gate, but how are you thinking about this season?
No. So it should it's going to be my end of year sim for starting fresh this year. Exact same thing. Just hopefully dialing it in more accurately. It's hard to explain that without showing you what I do exactly. But yeah, just the same thing. I mean, because if, in my opinion, a lot of people disagree, but I think, Sims is the way to go. And the closer you could dial it into reality without blowing up your computer, from processing power or taking too long, the more edge you have. So you start your sim and you just keep building on it.
Yep.
Yeah. If you're, and there's nothing wrong with these hand building things, and especially if you're doing it sharp, like some of the tweets Cody was sending out yesterday. Like if you're hand building those strategies, doing small fields, making these adjustments Sunday at halftime, you can get an edge.
Yeah, and I want to be marrying these two things. I want to use these sims as my guardrails to point me in the direction of the most likely outcomes. And then as a hand builder, then using a little bit of that finesse on situations where you think you might have maybe just a teeniest bit of an information edge. And then just, again, making sure that you are within those bands that you want to be, where you do have that low owned guy to make sure you're avoiding the duplicates and doing that stuff. So that's what I love as just even a hand builder here, of just being able to use these inputs, change the assumptions, see the type of lineups, what kind of thing. Okay, this is when I changed it to a big Cowboys win. And now we see we're getting just all of these 5-1s in that scenario. Like, just having a really good feel for it, because it is ultimately a math game, and we can type in the different things and then see what this is kind of, showing us the answers ahead of time to the test if the game goes exactly like we are predicting with an input assumption.
Well, slightly. I agree with that, but like, since it is a simulation where all these outcomes are coming in, within a distribution, there will be some of those outcomes anyways that we're kind of forcing in anyways along that bell curve or whatever the distribution shape is. So like, you will have like a 5% outcome of the Cowboys score 40, the Bucs score 0.
Gotcha.
Even within just without touching anything.
Right.
It's really just kind of forcing that in to see more like what it looks like, or you like really want 5%. This happens 5% of the time. So I want to take 5 of those lineups from a forced sim of this game script.
Right. Yep. That's a much better way to put it. Chris mentioning, did we address the whistles tweet from Brian? So I saw your tweet. I was busy this morning and haven't got a chance to watch the video. I kind of feel like we should just watch it right now. Is it worth watching?
Now we're going LOLz style. Let's do it.
Yeah. Also, as I'm pulling this up, Brian, do we have an update on our friend Mizzle Fries? Is he heading to the live final this weekend?
He got the information from me, and haven't heard from him since.
Okay. He also has his LOLz gear. I got the shipping confirmation, so that's on the way as well. So hopefully he's all squared away of heading to the live final as BRIC75.
Yeah, he's in contact with DK, so he should be good to go.
Okay. All right. I am going to share this because I am now very excited to watch our friend.
Oh, he's watching. There he is, man. What's up, buddy?
Oh, there he is. Preparing to go now. All caps, ready for launch. Matt Hudson, have a great time. Excited to report back. Did your LOLz gear make it? I saw the shipping confirmation the other day, but that might have been cutting it close. Here we go.
I'm David Bergman, aka Whistles Go Woo! You cannot play and succeed without understanding the game and understanding the sports. It's impossible. Sure, analytics can help anybody, and I'm sure all the top players are using their particular form of analytics, right? And different people specialize in different things. I would say that the way that I think about playing Draftkings is the same way that I conduct my personal business as well. Take big, big shots at any point that you feel like it's going to be good. If it misses, fine. You shot a ridiculously long three-pointer and you missed. But you're also going to amaze people when you throw a three-pointer from 5 to 10 feet behind the arc. Woo!
Dude, this is the two-faced persona that the whistles go woo, like this is like some, mass like marketing, scheme, like public relations. He literally is playing a different character in these videos.
Yeah. Listen, he is a DK operative, I think.
He's a plant, like they created him
created
in a lab
him,
for marketing. That is incredible. Did you get approached to record any footage for like that for this?
No, of course not.
What the hell, Draftkings? I mean, what the hell?
And nothing on can't make the World Cup team, no Central Division.
Why? Do you think it's because DraftKings just views you as too much of a liability? You're just a loose cannon on this LOLz show, and they can't be tethered to you.
Probably. Or they just don't care.
They just don't care.
They don't care.
I mean, come on. I want to see Brian's version of that video up there.
Yeah, I'd have to think. I'd definitely do something sarcastic.
Or what if you just this would be hilarious, Brian, if you like everything you said was just a quote from a Vegas Dave tweet or caption, but you like presented it. He was like, all whale plays all the time. We're going 50-0 and just present it as you though.
That was what I was thinking about. It's definitely quoting Vegas Dave. I got some a pep talk from my buddy Whistles,
Well, there you go, Matt. We are be sure to tag us in some photos. It looks like you have a plan
all right.
for your LOLz gear, maybe a little homemade LOLz gear here. But have a blast. And Brian, anything else on your mind? Any other week one hot takes, to get us centered here?
That's more Friday, Saturday. This is early. This is you got to be a professional YouTuber for getting it done this early.
Yes. I know it's we're a little ahead of it. Like I said, I will be back on a more regular schedule next week. Brian and I will be. I know Brian and I have been all over the place with LOLz lately, but we'll get back in our Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Definitely get subscribed as well. We have the iTunes and podcast version if you prefer LOLz in audio format, but I don't know why they wouldn't want to look at us, Brian.
Well, that's a good point. I think our next episode we're trying to do a sports betting 101. I kind of want to make a go-to. Somebody asks us a question, we just point right to it.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get an expert on. We don't have him booked. I think we got him, but I'm waiting until we book it to announce who we're going to have. Hopefully we can do that next week, maybe a week after.
Yep. I am, speaking of betting, I'm tracking my bets this year on Betsperts. I have the link down below. I'm kind of terrified, Brian, because I very much know I can't beat sides. But we're going to put ourselves out there. We're going to see how it goes. I am looking forward more to getting in the prop streets though, with the betting and stuff. So I'm going to become a little bit more of a bettor this year, Brian.
If you bet sides to take away attention to your prop bets,
that's the way to
you're going to lose, but what are you going to do? I mean, you might win for a season or something, but eventually you're going to lose. But if you don't get banned right away, that's you're paying to play.
Yeah, and it's still frustrating for me in Mass. We don't have the legalized betting, so I just still don't have access to the books that I want to have access to, which is just massively frustrating because I continue to see all these, DK props. They have a lot of good stuff up.
Yeah.
And a lot of the offshores are very slow with kind of getting up their props and stuff.
You know what I want too, might as well say it publicly, is someone to create software where I just click a button like Roto Tracker and it takes all my sports bets, puts them in a database so I could see how I'm doing. Or actually with my prop bets, I have an API I can feed to some software somewhere and track it for me.
I assume that's a feature, not a bug, right? The sports books in general don't want you to know how you're doing.
That's what I've read and I've been told is they want to make it super easy to know that you suck at sports betting. You can't beat sides.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. But it is frustrating. I've heard top sports bettors lament that as well, that the tracking is just awful, especially too when, I mean, you basically just have to be manually grinding this in your own spreadsheet. And that's tough when you're on all different kinds of sports books. It would be great to have something to aggregate all that.
Yeah, I just don't do it.
Yeah. Yep. And even like I'm tracking my bets on Betsperts. They have them for all the lines and stuff are easy to track, but the prop bets are still really hard to track because that would be more manual entry and all of that stuff. So I don't know, with the explosion of sports betting, you would think, Brian, in a couple
somebody's
years
going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really wish they'd go. They're not gonna, but go to that more poker DFS model of, some people are going to be winners. Promote them. Let tools out there for everyone else to use too. You know what I mean? Like, make it more like, hey, you can win at this friendly, and here's some tools that are, will allow on our site to track betting and stuff. I'm not holding my breath that'll happen. And, we talked about on the show, the peer-to-peer kind of like sports betting pools and stuff is probably more likely the direction they go if they're not banning us all, on these sites.
I know. Seriously. Let's see. Oh, Andrew is asking, oh no, this one. Are you guys playing in the OTM TOC stuff? So I did participate in the drop yesterday. I know they're still manually processing some of these transactions. I have started to see some of my cards hit my OpenSea account. This has to be one of the worst possible cards, the Jets DST for the year. I did get a couple that were intriguing to me. I love my Jags wide receivers, so that's fun. I like Miami wide receivers, so that's fun. And then I got Chicago QB and Green Bay QB. So getting Rodgers and potentially Fields is fun. So these were my individual cards, and then I have some packs that still need to get distributed. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's
I didn't even know what that was.
Did you?
I need to do that.
You need to do that. I think it's going to be fun because there's two ways to play it. So basically you submit a lineup each week with 5 cards: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defense. Their packs came with one of each. So you could just submit a starting lineup, and then they're having, tournaments that are free to enter with your cards. So there's the element, and then you get the entire position group. So you get Kansas City quarterback, you get 49ers running back. You don't have to worry about which one. You just get their whole points. And then to me, the fun strategy element. So there's that, putting your lineup in. There's kind of GPP strategy. Everyone's going to use KC quarterback, Bills wide receivers. So how do you get leverage there? And then there's also the element of playing the schedule and getting out in front of position groups that might be, looking up, or they just hit a hard part of the schedule. And then you can trade those in the OpenSea marketplace. So you can, if I get a few great weeks of the Dolphins wide receivers, I don't like their schedule, I can go and flip that. And then the final kind of strategy wrinkle is Thursday night performances are included in the Sunday slate, and you get the benefit of that knowledge of deciding whether you want to use those points in your lineup. So the element will be, say the Bucs wide receivers go off tomorrow night. I assume they're going to pop in the marketplace because people will want to buy the known kind of commodity points. So I think getting out in front of Thursday night positional groups and then using that as a flipping opportunity in the market will be fun as well.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah. So I know they had the drop itself yesterday went well in that it sold out within 5 minutes. I know they're having to individually process a lot of these transactions. So there is the delay on that, but I've been hanging out in the Discord and they expect to have that sorted out here within the next day or so. So you will get all of your cards in time to submit a lineup. Brian, are you, I assume you have a lot of work to do on your NFL model over the next couple of days.
Yeah. So like I said, it's mainly working with coders at this point. And if that doesn't get done, then I'm back to the exact same thing I had last year with no upgrades. So either way, it's not the end of the world. But hopefully if that does all get sorted out, it'll save me some time and hopefully be a little bit more accurate.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also excited once I kind of settle in and get in the rhythm. I do want to, last year you were really good about reminding me, hey, get over on, Yahoo, come over and play on Super Draft. So I want that to be a focus this year. For our tilt space lineups, we'll be doing the kind of the bigger small field stuff on DK, but I want to push myself to hand build some of those lineups on those sites where it's just softer. Yeah,
especially if you could do cash game on those.
Yeah.
And so for you, that's definitely a place you want to look, as opposed to like cash game on, I don't know, DK or something.
Yeah.
I would definitely consider it. And then, if you want to, or if people want to, we can do a couple actual sim shows or something on a Friday or something or whatever, whenever we, a non-LOLz.
Well, yeah.
NFL.
I love that. And I'm going to be booking weekly guests for my Friday show. And I think we should just plan on bringing you on a couple times for that this season. We can do kind of a special Friday sim GPP strategy show.
Yeah, perfect. That works.
The contest that I have to win, Brian, and I'm mad that I didn't get more entries in. Did you get any in the CryptoPunk contest on DK?
Well, did it already fill up?
It filled like a week ago. It filled very quickly.
Oh my God. No, I didn't. I assumed there would be overlay or something. That's crazy.
Well, it's funny because wasn't there a little overlay the first?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then we saw another CryptoPunk run up and everyone's like, I'm entering in this.
Well, now I guess not with CryptoPunks, but with crypto in general, just tanking yesterday, past day and a half. It's the whole thing's insane.
How much, DK, like, I guess I don't necessarily know kind of the regulatory issues with this, but if they allowed people to deposit in ETH, or Bitcoin, I know no one wants to let go of their Bitcoin, but people are so used to transacting in ETH now that
I know
you could get some people coming in and firing if you allowed ETH deposits.
Yes, I know. It'd be smart, right, for DK to do that if assuming it's legal, because if you could, OpenSea might end up being that. Because wouldn't you think like Top Shot would blow up if they threw Top Shots on OpenSea?
Yeah.
And you can just fire ETH at it.
Well, that's the thing. Even people are saying even just a short-term Band-Aid fix, like display the prices in ETH on Top Shot, because it is crazy. People have said it. I'm not the first one to say this, but there is such a disconnect between seeing a US dollar price and an Ethereum price. It truly feels like fake money at times when you're staring at ETH.
Yeah, like a casino or something. Yeah,
definitely
that. But they're on the flow chain. But yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah, them doing anything smart would make me happy.
Yeah, well, we were joking yesterday with Andy. He had a little bit of cash on his Underdog account, and we're trying to get him into Big Dog, and I guarantee Andy would have just waltzed in there and fired a few big dogs if he could just do a quick ETH deposit. Like, some of these guys are that are so heavily tilted towards ETH. We need this for them.
It could be wrong, but yeah, like the Tom Brady NFTs on DraftKings, all those, if they were in ETH, I think it'd be different. Yeah, and it's getting to the point. You remember Bitcoin back in 5 years ago, 7 years ago, people they're never gonna know how much Bitcoin, and they're never going to type in Bitcoin. It's like, well, ETH is kind of getting to that point. I know it's younger, although Zero Hedge reported 18% of Americans have NFTs. It seems insane that can't be right, but like, there's still a lot of people who are like, yeah, it's 1 ETH. It's like 0.7 ETH. They can do it for 0.1 ETH. Like everyone knows, and like it doesn't matter if it goes up 1,000 or down 800 or something. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's like 0.1. 0.5.
Yeah, it is messed up. Like it going after some of these, mint drops, in the past week where I literally spent $800 in gas fees. And like, just imagine me like going into a sneaker store and buying a really nice pair of sneakers. And they're like, all right, it's $250 for the sneaker. But you will have to pay $800 as a processing fee. Yeah. I would laugh and walk out of the store. And yet with Ethereum, I'm like, okay.
It's crazy. And you do this thing too. It's like, oh, it's $230 gas fee. Like, oh, I'll wait. And you wait like an hour. It's like $280. You're like, yeah, fuck it, I want
it. Yeah, exactly. I did mention Underdog one thing. So I did just get word. The $25 deposit bonus is ending on, I believe, September 13th. I believe there's 5 days. It's going to be changing to something much lower. So if you haven't signed up for Underdog, even though best ball season is winding down, they're going to have their pick'em. They're going to have their rivalry contest. They even have these mini drafts for the specific slate. So all kinds of action. You can get a free $25 with promo code Pete, $10 deposit, free $25. So make sure you lock that up before the promo is going away here in 5 days. Brian, what are you going to say?
It looks like DraftKings not going to give away 1 million best balls this year, right?
They're not flooding the market. Are we getting some good overlay there?
I was going to look today, I guess, and then fire a couple today and tomorrow before the season starts.
Yeah, the place on Underdog to get overlay is probably the big dog. It's at 84%. So you could potentially see there one of the best payout structures on Underdog with 100,000, 50,000, 40,000, 30,000. So if you were waiting to fire a bullet and want some overlay, you can hop in the big dog there. Like I said, I have a week 1 kind of strategy GPP preview with Leone that'll go up on Friday at noon while I'm in Vegas. So you can look forward to that. I will be back on Sunday morning, going to do a little live show, talking about exposures, ownership, all of that stuff as it's changed over the course of the week. I'm kind of flying blind right now on ownership. I know some generalities of where I think people will be, but man, week 1, Brian, always feels like the Wild West for ownership.
Yeah, it'll tighten up. Once you get to Sunday, a couple hours before lock, the sites will start updating it, and it's week 1.
Yeah,
but as long as you're getting 70% accurate, good enough.
That's right. And I also need to get out is because I'm looking at all the rookies that I've been in second year guys I've been drafting, especially the rookies in the best ball tournaments. They finish strong. They can be the league winners. But this is week 1. And so it's going to be really hard for me to not just be like, oh, Rondell Moore, Terrace Marshall, all these rookies I love who might not get off to the fastest of starts. I got to get back in DFS brain.
It won't take you long.
Yeah.
It's not that different. But yeah.
Yep. All right, guys, appreciate you hanging out. Thank you for coming by for this hodgepodge DFS/LOLz kickoff stream. Excited for a big year on the channel. As I mentioned, if you guys want access to the private DFS Run the Sims Discord in the Deposit Kingdom Discord, you can become a member here. Or if you sign up for Run the Sims, if you like the tools you saw earlier, you can get 10% off any of the packages with promo code Pete. They are my presenting sponsor, my tool sponsor all year. Very excited to work with them. Brian, any final plugs here before we get on our way?
No, pod. We're going to put this up on a pod, I'm assuming, Pete?
Yeah, I'll cut out me rambling at the beginning and give you the LOLz portion.
Okay. So yeah, pod will be up. So we'd appreciate if you subscribe to that. And then hopefully next week we'll be back at 8 with a sports betting episode.
Yeah, we'll get back on it. We were trying to pull that off, but with the early schedule this morning, it was a little tougher to do. But we'll get back in the saddle with LOLz. Thank you guys. Have an awesome week 1. I will see you on Friday from the past, and then I will see you live on Sunday morning. Peace.